Electrified. When you touch me, I'm shocked. The way you're feeling me intensified. Blow me out of this world. If it's okay with you, I'll open my mind. Feel my heart pulverize. Smash all I am in pieces. See me inside out. Blast my walls down. With you I feel my soul explode to color. Baby, let the fuse make all my fears seem smaller. I'm fragmentized. Flare up tonight, light up the underworld, ignite the skies, line the clouds gold.
Hello everybody, I'm here and I'm proud to present the Poseidon Z mechanical keyboard. This particular model is RGB. Now, as you can tell from the beginning montage or glamour shots, if you will, it's quite a professional looking keyboard besides the space bar here and the little gaming bits on the side there. Besides those little bits of hints telling you that I'm a gaming keyboard, it looks quite professional, and I very much enjoy the fact that this particular board has this certain look to it, because if you couldn't tell, the competition such as the Razer Chroma, the Razer Black Widow Chroma, and I believe to a certain extent the Corsair K70 also looks very gamery. Yeah. Which to me, that's a personal preference thing. To you it might be different, but we can both agree that these LED lights are quite vibrant and quite beautiful. Also, one thing that I did notice on the top of the board, there are pieces of rubber here on the left, and the same on the right, which I don't know why is there. I don't know why they exist, and if you guys know why they are there and why they exist, please comment down below. That would be fantastic, because I don't think I'll ever be putting my keyboard up unless I'm reviewing the backside. Maybe the people at TT Esports thought about me and how I tend to flip my keyboards up to review the backside, and they come up with rubber pieces to make the keyboard a little bit more comfortable. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. Now, onto the media controls, which is again through the functional keys, which I would really much prefer it having dedicated media control keys, but this is not the case. Then, oh well, it's not the end of the world, but I would much prefer to have dedicated media keys. And you also get the macro control button via the function as well. And you do have, which is something that I really do like, is profile switches at the function of insert, delete. You got home, page up, and page down. I don't think this would categorize as a function bank. I'm not sure what this particular bank of key would be classified as. If you guys know, please feel free to comment down below and let me know. That'd be great. Now, since after we covered the front, let's go to the back. Of course, before heading off to the back, I tend to mention the cable, and here it is. The cable is thinly rubberized, which is a negative for the price point that you're paying for. And it's also a silver USB tip, which is also a negative because of the price that you're paying for this. That will of course be mentioned later on in the video. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rubber pieces to supposedly keep the keyboard still. And I'll get to that in a second, because I do like the fact that they made the stands rubberized, which is fantastic by the way. But again, the rubbers are supposed to keep the keyboard still, which they are not. They are not still. The keyboard will not keep still, and I will try to demonstrate here. This is the same amount of force that I use during the Hermes test, during the Logitech G710 No Plus, the Cherry MX Blue test, and generally the same amount of force that is being used to test the rubber to make sure that it would stay still. This is not the case. It will not stay still, which means why? Why would it not stay still? And it's not like this is a bargain keyboard too, but I'm gonna get back to that again. And now let's head on to the software. Alright, we are on the software end of the Poseidon Z RGB, and as you can see here, it's very user friendly actually, with 5 different types of profiles. Macro key settings. This is not as complex as the Hermes, but also not as simple as I would hope for, but it is quite useful because then you can customize your delay time, and that could be a factor to how you would play your games. I suppose so. Then of course we have our lighting settings, or lighting options, which are fully lighted, reactive, aeroflow, wave, and ripple. And I'm pretty sure I demonstrated all of them. Maybe except for the fully lighted part. That has not been in the video. But let's move on. And what's really interesting about this lighting option is that you get to customize each individual keys. Let's say if these keys are white, I want them to be green now, and there are certain shades of green. And in case if this is not accurate enough to your taste, you can actually set the number to your preference. So of course 16.8 million colors, which is awesome. And I can set this green, 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 green. Then I click apply, and there's a loading screen, which will take a while, but there's a reason for that. Is that the keyboard will remember your settings. That's why you have to wait each and every time you change a lighting setting. Again, I like to emphasize that you have to wait each and every time you apply the settings. Now, to my knowledge, there are 5 different profiles, and you are bound to 5 different profiles. Unless there's a software update or there is a memory chip that's built into the keyboard that can only memorize 5 different profiles, then of course that's going to be a different case. And of course all of the keys can be individually macro, which is fantastic. I like that a lot. But for those that play RPGs, or MMORPGs to be exact, I believe most of you guys would prefer having a bank of dedicated macro buttons. I believe that is something that you guys would more likely prefer than just to be able to change any keys, maybe in a numpad. I don't think MMORPG use numpads a lot, so you could probably use the numpad, but then again, your mouse is gonna, that's where your hand should be controlling your mouse, and you want to have full control of your mouse. So, not quite sure how that would work, but I do like the fact that you can have instant shift system, which is basically what I demonstrated before with the lighting settings, how you can change the different lighting settings on the fly with the 5 different profiles. Those 5 different profiles can be accessed instantly through function and the insert to page down bank of buttons. Now let's move on to the typing experience. Here's my lighting setting that I missed in the beginning of the video, and I choose to have supposedly blue, but it's gonna show up purple. For my WASD, white basically is the background. Shift, Control, Space are gonna be red. QER is red for reloading. The top number is light blue, and then we have a blue greenish for the F keys, pink for escape. The same scenario with the arrow keys, blue, but it's gonna show up purple. And the insert to page down bank of buttons is white, with the numpad, just the numbers, being yellow, and the rest is white. Now then, for the typing experience, the Kale Brown particular key switch is quite enjoyable to type. It's very similar to the Cherry MX Browns. Not sure if that is a coincidence or not, but if it is, then, well, it is. It's quite smooth, moving from one key to another, and the keys registered when they're being pressed, which is of course fantastic news. That space bar from the Logitech G105. Now, of course, I believe I forgot to mention in the special features that you have a dedicated gaming mode button, which is very nice to have. Now then, we're going to move on to the gaming side of the board. It's a pretty decent gamer. Buttons are very responsive. They are responsive enough. They are not as fast as Reds because they have the tactile feel, and the ability to have micro, or should I say macro keys, are very handy. But once again, as I mentioned in the software before, it lacks a dedicated bank of macro buttons, which could be good or bad. And for this particular case, I'm going to say it's bad. Of course, we always have the good, the bad, get it, or forget it. And we're on with the good. Of course, RGB is always a plus because they're beautiful and they're fun to play with. And they are just a great way to showcase your keyboard. And especially this particular one with its very professional look, you can surprise a lot of people. There are quite a few, maybe I think it's more than a handful of people that when I show them the keyboard, they think, oh, it's just a regular keyboard. Then they push the button and whoosh, vibrancy. They love it. It's a very fun little toy and it's very nice to have. Of course, another thing that's very nice to have is the dedicated gaming mode button. That's always very useful. And TT Esports 5-year warranty. That is fantastic. That is saying that they are very confident in their product and they are very confident that this particular switch will last you for a very long time. Otherwise, they would not have included the 5-year warranty because they know you won't be turning them in anytime soon. And last but not least, the brown switch, which is very similar to the Cherry MX Browns, is the jack of all trades. It's a decent typer, it's a decent gamer, but it's a master of none. Now, of course, with every good comes the bad. And the bad, as I said before, it is thin rubber cable with silver tip USB. That's not good. And again, the rubber that's on the board does not keep the board still at all. No, it does not. With the amount of force that I use, yeah, it does not keep still, which is not very good. And I don't think if you notice, well, maybe it's quite noticeable in the camera, is that the LEDs bleed. Let's see here, from Q to 2 to W, the colors bleed through. Now, I'm not sure if other RGB keyboards does this. I don't remember if the Corsair K65 RGB does this, but this doesn't look nice at all. Yeah, just to be quite honest with you guys, like, the color bleeds through, and that's no. And one major gripe that I have about this particular board is that when I first type it, let's see here, let's frame it so you guys can probably understand it better. Whenever I purchase a keyboard, I tend to do the first typing test, and that tends to be my sort of first impressions that I used to do videos on, but I realized that, yeah, they're basically reviews, so I'm just gonna make them reviews now. But the point that I'm trying to make is that when I first typed on this particular board, it feels cheap. I'm just gonna downright say it. It feels cheap when I first type on it. And that gives me a sense of buyer's remorse, which is not something you want. It's not, especially for the price that you're paying for this. And now it sort of still feels pretty cheap though. Not as much as it did before during the first impressions, but still, it's still there, and I don't know. Of course, we're down to our final verdict. It's get it or forget it. And this particular board retails for $129.99. That's right. So just gonna let that sink in for a little bit. And there is no tacked on accessories like a tacked on wrist rest, which is hard plastic or something like that. None of that. None of that at all, which is good. Limiting software, however, is that if you notice for the K65 RGB, this can also be my background light. And if I were to have ripple effects and I start typing it in, it's going to have a ripple effect on top of the background backlighting. Which means that there's a lot more customization that you can do with RGB in terms of the software department. However, the K65 did cost more though. It cost around $150 out the door. And this one cost me around $135 out the door. So does the price justify? I'm not really sure. I'm going to let you decide. And for this particular price that you're paying for it, it's not a Cherry MX Switch, but you have a 5-year warranty, so I guess you can say it justifies for it. They have a TT certified brown switch with a 5-year warranty, so it's really hard to say that making the Switch to a non-Cherry MX, pun intended, is a bad move because they are being backed up with a 5-year warranty, which keeping a keyboard for 5 years, even though you're paying $130 for it, it's quite a long time. It's like buying a car, pretty much, right? Yeah, 5 years. And as the final verdict, I would say